Aloha everyone, and welcome to another Carbon 60 video by me, Kay Elmer. And in this video I would like to share with you my research into making and taking C60 MCT oil. First, disclaimers. This material is for research purposes only. C60 oil is not approved for consumption by the FDA. You understand that making and consuming C60 oil is experimental, and you do so at your own risk. I do not endorse any products. I do not get paid in any way for making videos. This material is purely my own research that I willingly share with others. All right, let's get started. First of all, why even bother, right? You all know what C60 is and what the benefits of that is, hopefully by now. But what are the benefits of MCT oil? Well, the first benefit is it's very antimicrobial in terms of being able to fight off bacteria and viruses that help balance your gut flora and support your immune health. It provides clean, quick energy, especially to your brain when you take it, and you will find that out if you try it. It's easier to digest than most other fats, so if you have problems with, let's say, some of the more exotic oils, this might be easier on you. And they can help you lose unwanted fat because of the energy boost and its ability to suppress hunger. And lastly, there's some discussions out there that it may actually improve insulin sensitivity. So there's a lot of benefits to MCT as opposed to, let's say, just taking coconut oil by itself. So, but here's a little bit of a chemistry lesson. Keep it short here for you. But what is MCT oil? Well, MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides, which are fatty acids that have an aliphatic tail of 6 to 12 carbon atoms. And what that means is, and by illustration, is here's a diagram of the most common fatty acid found in coconut oil called lauric acid. It's comprised of two parts. The main part here, which is like the root of the molecule, is called the carboxyl group. And then there's a chain of carbon atoms called the hydrocarbon chain attached to that that comprise the entire molecule. Now, it's those number of little C's here, those carbon atoms. It's the number of them that determine whether or not, which is it's a small, medium, or long chain triglyceride. And so if it has 6 to 12 of these carbon atoms, it's going to be a medium chain triglyceride. Now, MCT oil is most often derived from coconut oil, but it's sometimes made from palm oil. And another really great benefit of MCT oil is that it's colorless, odorless, and solidifies at 60.8 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's important because coconut oil solidifies at 76. So if you live in a colder climate and you don't want your oil to harden on your countertop, then switching from coconut to MCT will prevent that. And also, if you don't like the taste of coconut oil, MCT is the way to go. Now, when you're talking about coconut oil in general, there's 13 different fatty acids that comprise coconut oil, and these are all the different fatty acids. But it's only these 5 right here that have 6 to 12 carbon atoms in the molecule and are considered to be the medium chain fatty acids. So what's interesting, though, when I was doing my research on this was that although there are 5 different MCT oils, as shown in the prior slide, in coconut oil, the products sold as MCT oil are made up of primarily 3 of them: Caprylic acid, which is 8 carbon atoms; Capric acid, which is 10 carbon atoms; and then Lauric acid, the 12. All right, so that was what I thought was very interesting. The other 2 are ignored. I would say that there's probably trace elements of them, but they're not disclosed on the product labels. And that's where I got my data from. All right. So now let's take a look at these 3 and to figure out why are these the 3 that are sold as MCT oil in products. The first one, and this is like the gold standard of MCT. Of all the different MCTs, this is the one that has the best benefits when you're taking it. And it has high potent antimicrobial properties that help you maintain a healthy gut. And of course, again, fastest to metabolize in the brain. I want to repeat that. The caprylic acid, C8, of all the medium chain triglycerides, is the fastest fatty acid that will to metabolize in your brain. Your liver does not need to process this rare type of MCT, and it only takes 3 steps for your body to turn it into ATP, which is the cellular fuel you use. Now, sugar, as a comparison, takes 26 steps to convert from sugar into ATP, which makes what C8 or caprylic acid so good at suppressing your cravings. Now, as an example, if you wanted to try to take caprylic acid, but you only took coconut, it would take 18 tablespoons of coconut oil to just get 1 tablespoon of caprylic acid. So it is very, very small part of coconut oil, but when you extract it, it has amazing benefits. Now, the next fatty acid in coconut oil that is used in products is the capric acid, which is C10, and it's represented 4 to 8% of coconut oil. Now, it has it has similar benefits as caprylic acid, but it's not as effective. It is slower to turn into energy. It's also more affordable. It's apparently easier to produce than C8 or extract, I would say. And then it is the only other MCT, and this is a key point again. It's the only other MCT that turns into ATP quickly without going through the liver. Okay, and then you would need, if you want to compare, 6 tablespoons of coconut oil to get 1 tablespoon of C10 oil. So capric acid is like the little brother to capric or caprylic acid in terms of the highly beneficial MCT or fatty acids extracted from coconut oil that's sold in products. So the last one, the third one I would say, is lauric acid, which is comprised of the 12 carbon atoms in the molecule. And like I said earlier, it comprises practically half of coconut oil. Now, the thing about lauric acid, though, is that it requires a pit stop in the liver rather than getting immediately converted into energy like other MCTs. So that's why there's a huge difference in energy boost when you just take plain old coconut oil versus caprylic acid coconut oil or a combination of caprylic and capric. Now, this is why lauric acid is more accurately described as an LCT because of the way it acts in the body, and not so much like MCT as marketers claim. That's kind of a debate out there in this product chain, in the product area for MCTs, is that, is lauric acid really MCT? Now, the thing about lauric acid, too, is it raises cholesterol more than any other fatty acid, and is also commonly cited as having antimicrobial effects, which it does, except the shorter chain MCTs, which are way more effective against aggressive candida yeast and even gonorrhea and chlamydia as a glyceride. I guess I said that right. So those are the three. And so when I took a look at the different ratios of fatty acids in various products, I went on Amazon, did that yesterday, and I looked at only 32-ounce bottles, so you get a price comparison, apples to apples, and all of these various numbers here are expressed in grams. By the way, there's a copy of this in the video description below. There's a link to it, so if you want to just go ahead and pull that up, you can click on any one of these. It'll take you right to the Amazon page. But this is what I kind of discovered by comparing a bunch of them, and I just went down the full page, right, just at random, so there's no bias here. And so here's all the different ones that were posted on the page when I did a search on MCT oil, 32 ounces, and then what I found was there's a wide range of what I would call the blend, the ratios of the different kinds of acids. And so as I stated, caprylic acid is the most expensive to extract, and the next is capric, and then of course lauric is basically coconut oil, half of coconut oil. So you can see that there's this huge range, and the only thing, like literally there's 13, the first 13 I ran across, there's only 2, these 2 guys right here, that have the same the same blend. They have 9.8 grams of caprylic and 4.2 capric, and so everybody, other than that, every single other one of these is different. And I think that's really important to note that if the best MCT is caprylic, you can see by this, and I arranged it by the amount of caprylic acid, then you're going to want obviously more caprylic acid. And then the thing also too I noticed in the marketing literature was that everyone really touts how much caprylic acid they've got, and if they don't have a lot, then they just tout MCT. But this is the best one for your body. Capric is next. So you can see where everyone basically has way more caprylic than capric, and most don't have any lauric at all. It's just these 2. And so when you're looking at shopping and buying MCT oils, keep that in mind, keep the blend in mind, and then if you just wanted only caprylic acid, then these are the only 2, and one of them is called Bulletproof Octane. Well, actually, I would say 3, because this is such a small difference right here. So let's say there's 3 that are primarily just pure caprylic acid. So you got bulletproof, brain octane, you've got terraformations, formulation, sorry, and LifeSense Keto. Now, this is the one I've been buying. I started out buying bulletproof octane. I bought a couple of bottles of those, but I've switched over to Terra formulations because look at the price difference here. You look at bulletproof, it sells for $45.95 as of yesterday. I think my first time I ever bought it was like $52, $55, and so and I thought that's was what it cost. But man, you can get as low as $30 and get literally more caprylic acid in the bottle than you do from bulletproof, and that's like literally a 34% savings off of bulletproof. So I switched to this one for my cost savings because it's way cheaper to buy this brand than it is to buy bulletproof. Of course, then if you want to get the most caprylic acid, it's $36.95. So these three right here are the ones to go if you just want to get the quote brain octane level caprylic 100% caprylic acid, and then the rest are just a different blend of the different acids as stated. So that's an interesting little data point that I had. Now, in terms of making C60 oil, as I mentioned, I just go with 100% caprylic acid after reading all the stuff that I read. So that's what I use when I say MCT oil from this point forward, which is important to remember. Now, everybody calls MCT oil, but you got to go, well, what's in it? When you buy it. So I buy the 100% caprylic acid MCT oil. Okay, that's the standard I've set for myself. And so now, how to make it? And these are the simple steps. And the thing about it too, the very first thing you should realize is that, and this has been confirmed by practically everybody I've chatted with in the Telegram group, in that when they make C60 MCT oil, when they add the C60 to it, usually everyone's using powder. The C60 just falls. It's so less viscous, it's watery compared to coconut oil, that it's literally acts like water. And so because it's not thick, it just doesn't hold the C60 in colloidal suspension like coconut oil would, or avocado or olive oil. And so what happens is this is after I would say half a dozen, no, actually probably a dozen or so batches that I've done, is that I found that when I add the regular amount of C60, which is 8 grams per 1,000 milliliters into the first batch I make, I just do the same standard process, which is the rat study, benchmark, back to basics there. Stir for 2 weeks, and I let it settle for 10. And so that's my first batch, and you get 100. It's basically 1,000 milliliters. And then because C60 falls out of MCT and you don't get as much that stays in solution, what I do, and you'll notice this, and I'll show you the video, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of C60 at the bottom of the flask after you let it settle. And so what I do is I just filter off the top 975 milliliters. I leave about 25 milliliters at the very bottom of the flask, and I try not to disturb it because I don't want to put it in I don't want to filter it out. It's very expensive. I mean, you guys realize, right? C60 right now is retailing at 5.5 times the value of gold, so it is very expensive. Do not waste it. And so what I do is I gently pour the top off into my filter, and I filter it. And then when the empty flask that's got the C60 in the bottom, I'll add more oil, repeat steps 2 and 3, which is stir it again, settle it again, pour off the top again, add more oil, stir it, settle it, and then filter it one last time. And what I've successfully been able to do, and I've done this twice now, I'm doing it the third time right now, which is make 3 separate batches out of one attempt. And so the process goes like this from a visual standpoint. My first batch is 1,000 milliliters. I pour off the top, filter. My second batch is 500 milliliters. Then I pour off the top and filter. And then my third batch is 250 milliliters. And then I just filter the whole thing. And by the time you're down to the third batch, you can still see this black film on the bottom of the flask, but there's so little left, it's not worth trying to go for a fourth one. And that's my experience. Okay, and then when you do it this way, your total yield out of one little dose of C60 in the oil it comes out that you end up with 1,700 milliliters of C60 MCT oil if you go with the standard, rat study approach. And the estimate, and this is something that I'm guessing, some of the other folks on the chat room are guessing, is that the estimated saturation of C60 in MCT because of this effect, where it doesn't hold well, is about 0.4 milligrams per milliliters, and that's our guess right now because it's almost impossible to measure. And so let me show you how that looks when I did it at home. So now one of the things obviously is stir it first, so you can see while it's so watery, it creates this little vortex here, and you don't really see that at all in coconut oil or other oils. And so you can see where I've added the C60, the powder's filtering in and stirring around. It immediately starts to turn black, and then it just stirs and stirs. And this is batch 1 at 1,000 milliliters. And this is what it looks like when you first add the C60 to it. It turns black, and then about 24 hours later, it'll convert into just this beautiful dark purple color. Okay? All right? And so once it's been sitting there, then again, this is where you would stir it for 2 weeks, and this is after letting it settle for 10 days. This is where I was filtering it, and if you recognize the video, this is in my vacuum pump video times. And so that's what it looks like when I'm filtering the very first batch. And let me back this up a second. See this right here? This right here is what's left over after the first batch. And so you can just see how much C60 is just falling out. And this is after stirring 2 weeks and letting it settle for 10 days. It just all falls right out. But this is what you get. That's, basically this is your first batch. And it comes out this beautiful purple color. And so filter out the first batch. Take care of that puppy, and then with this guy, add back in the oil till you get around 500. That's kind of me holding it weird. And so then you pour the oil, your fresh oil, fresh MCT oil, by the way, into the flask. Stir vigorously. You got to really, really, really whip it around there to get it all off the bottom, and then you put it back on your stir for a couple of weeks here. And so that's what's important. Make sure, though, that this is an important step. You've got to pull it off the bottom by just shaking the crap out of it, basically, so that there's nothing left on the bottom. It's all in suspension before you put it on your stir. Okay, and then this is what it ends up looking like, the first batch when it was done. One thing here I want to add too, just on a side note, this is the filter after the first batch, and you can see that it's not black, which means that you got pretty much all of the C60 has floated to the bottom, and then what's left that's suspended usually is always brown for me, and I'm not sure exactly what that brown is. It's whatever particulates were in the oil or whatever, but this is what the filter looks like after you finish with the first batch. And I get a question I just want to put out here real quick, is that in the chat room I get a question quite often about whether or not people need to filter or not. And so the answer is quite simply this: if this brown stuff, if you don't mind letting your kidneys filter this for you, and you don't have problems with your kidneys filtering it for you, then by all means you don't need to filter. But for someone like myself, I've had kidney stones a few times. I don't want this in my body, and I did have problems with it last year, so I make sure to use a filter. So I don't want my kidneys to be the filter for my C60 oil, and so I use a filter paper. Otherwise, if you don't have problems, go ahead. But that's what that brown stuff is what's going to go into your body, and you get filtered by your kidneys if you don't filter. Anyway, so this is batch number 2. It's black again, right? And I just put it on the stir. And here we go again. This is batch number 2. Stir 2 weeks. Let settle for 10 days. And then we're going to go ahead and make batch number 3 when as we filter batch number 2. So let's see, got that vortex again. So now I just let that sit, and then once it's done sitting, this is the color it turns. And you can see something that's interesting at this point. It's not that beautiful purple anymore. The second one comes out this dusty rose sort of color. I'm not sure, but that's the color of the second batch. And then once I pour that in, you'll see the amount of C60 at the very bottom. Again, be very, 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 very gentle when pouring out the C60 oil, or MCT oil. You don't want to disturb the C60 at the bottom. Now that's it right there. You see that? This is what's left after this. This is literally, that is the second batch right there, the bottom of the second batch. So what I'm going to do is take this and I'm going to make a third batch with it. But you can see how much less dark it is. You know, it's definitely a lot less C60 in the flask. But there's C60 in there. You can tell, right? You can see it right there. So set that aside. Finish up batch number 2. Filter this guy off. Here's my MCT that I bought, Terra Formulations, and then I'm going to pour this. For my third batch now, I'm going to fill it back up to 250 milliliters or thereabouts. It's kind of hard to do that when I'm holding the camera. So I was guessing there. And so I realize right now it should have been up here. Anyway, so again, this is batch number 3. Shake the crap out of it. Get the C60 off the bottom. Get it into suspension. It looks like it needs more shaking right there. Okay, but that's the main thing though. Make sure that nothing is stuck to the bottom, because it'll stick to the bottom if you don't give it a good shake. Okay, and there you go. There's that 250 roughly, or whatever. I think I blew that one. That would probably be the 200 line. So 200 milliliters, and there it is. And there it just, well, that's a little aggressive. I think I turned it down after that. And then that's batch number 3. So this is batch number 3 now, the 250. And it's got, make sure all your 660s in suspension. And then there you go. Now this is batch number 2. I finished, well, I'm doing 2 things at once. So this is batch number 2, filtering away, and this is the color it turns out to. And so what's really cool is, there you go. That's batch number 2, a little lighter than the batch number 1. And then of course your batch number 3 is going to be lighter in color than batch number 2. So that's I kind of tried to display that with these 3 colors. But that's the general idea, that you're going to have to go, batch number 1, batch number 2, batch number 3. Well, at least you don't have to, but that's how I do it. That's what works for me. This is my 3rd time of doing 3 batches, and each time I've had the same results. It comes out really well, and you end up having a very nice purple MCT, C60 oil. So there you go. It's pretty simple. Just follow these simple steps, and you can go ahead and duplicate that effort. I've confirmed it now, with doing it so often. So that's how I do it. Now, the thing about the saturation point. So this is the Purple Power. If you're familiar with the product, the C60 Purple Power, they're the ones that kind of made it the term famous, at least in the C60 environment, is what inside the Telegram chat group that we have, the C60 group. Somebody actually sent an email to the Purple Power guys and asked them, how do you get 0.9? Because they claim they have 0.9 milligrams per milliliter, and as you can see, because the MCT oil doesn't hold the C60 and it keeps falling out, you take 0.8 grams and you put it in, and then it just, then there's still left over, and there's still left over. That, the people in the chat group have somewhat estimated that it's 0.4, but you've got Purple Power, and they're claiming that they have 0.9. So somebody out there asked them, and then this was their reply, and I wanted to share it with you because it's really kind of interesting. From a how much C60 can you get in MCT oil, right? And so this is their response. Our production people have developed new mixing techniques which can get well over 2 milligrams of C60 per milliliter. Now that's 2 milligrams compared to 0.8, which is the rat study, right? But that's per milliliter in avocado oil. Okay, that's what they're saying. So it is not a problem for us to get 0.9 milligrams of C60 per milliliter into coconut oil. Okay, so this is the discussion's MCT. So they say you are correct that MCT does not hold as much C60 as the longer 18 carbon chain avocado oil. We have not been able to get over 2 milligrams of C60 per milliliter for the MCT. Okay, so they're admitting that MCT doesn't hold as well as coconut or avocado, and they're saying that they haven't been able to achieve it over 2. Worse, here stuck at 0.4. So that's still, it's interesting to, that they've got 0.9. We're getting 0.4, and they can't even get over 0.9 for themselves, obviously, with MCT. For the MCT with this new technique, but can using regular coconut oil, which is what they stated, through our product, though our product is only sold using MCT oil at this point. So they're saying that they're only using MCT oil They can get over 2 milligrams in coconut, but they can't in MCT, and they're saying that their MCT is 0.9. So that's real interesting. So Purple Power is able, per their claim, to get 0.9 milligrams per milliliters of C60 in MCT oil, but the rest of us get like less than that. So I just wanted to throw this out there. How do you increase the C60 saturation in MCT oil? Well, so what are your thoughts? So these are what some of the discussion in the chat group, some of my own thoughts, but clearly it's kind of like the challenge is on. Now, how do we do this? Because they, quote, have figured it out, but we haven't. But the thing is I'm using 100% Caprylic acid, so the very first thought I had was, what's their ratio, which they do not disclose. So, and whether or not they use long-chain triglycerides, and is that part of their MCT? If you remember from up here, everybody's different, in terms of how much Caprylic versus Capric versus Lauric acid is what they're calling MCT. So when Purple Power says we've got MCT, what we don't know is what's their fatty acid ratios, what's their blend, of the different acids that comprise what they're calling MCT, in order to get 0.9. So that's something that is a thought that to experiment with different blends and to see if you can get a higher saturation of C60 to increase the amount of C60 that MCT will hold, and also too the type of C60, whether it's sublimed, regular, powdered, sublime powdered, or pulverized. It comes in different forms. So that could be a factor. Obviously, temperature. We know from the one study on olive oil that the colder the oil was, the higher of saturation rate it would have in terms of holding the C60 in colloidal suspension. So maybe temperature is an issue. You can get, as noted earlier, you can get as low as 61 degrees, or I would go 62, with MCT without it getting hard. So lowering the temperature may be a way because it works with olive oil. The duration of stirring. One of the individuals on the chat group actually documented his MCT effort, and it's linked in the description below, and did a fantastic job in his experiment and his making of MCT C60 oil, and he documented it really well. I highly recommend you guys check it out. He's got his pictures and everything, and he's also an individual that thinks it's 0.4 milligrams per milliliters of saturation. And so right now I believe he's experimenting with going 3 weeks of stirring instead of 2. And so that's another idea too. So these are all different ideas, because I know all of you are tinkerers like myself. We were going to probably start trying to figure out how do I get, because MCT is such a superior oil. It'd be great if we could get up to 0.9 or 2 milligrams and get that C60 held in solution in an MCT oil. But for right now, I don't know what else. I'm trying to think of other things that might make that happen. So Rog is looking at doing a 3-week stir. I'm thinking of blending different ones and lowering the temperature, maybe trying pulverized instead of powder, that kind of thing. The stirring method is also something to consider. One of the things about stirring is they do make magnetic stirrers, right, that go that reverse direction. And if you remember your physics class, right, when you do that, it creates this huge energy flux when you're stirring one way and then stir it the opposite way. And so they switch back and forth, or you can actually stir just counterclockwise, or you can stir just clockwise, and then structuring is the whole concept of, if you understand what water structuring is all about, you can apply some of those same methodologies as well while it's being stirred. So these are some of the ideas right off the top of my head. And lastly, if you've got any ideas on ways you think that you can increase saturation of C60, then by all means, because that's just something we're all chewing on right now, because we keep running into this really low saturation rate. And then lastly, I want to leave you with this idea, is that the MCT dosage, and this is something to just remember, that if you make it at home, you're getting home grade. If you're buying Purple Power, that's commercial grade, and pretty much twice as much C60s in it. But if you take a look at the rat study, which is the benchmark of all, the saturation rate is that 0.8 milligrams per milliliter. That's how much C60 is in the oil. And 1 tablespoon is around 15 milliliters. So when you take an olive oil, C60 in olive oil, you take 1 tablespoon, you are pretty much taking 12 milligrams of C60. So everyone always talks about the oil, but it's what's really important here is how much C60 are you trying to take. And so if you're taking regular olive oil or avocado oil, and it's 0.8 milligrams per milliliter, then you're getting about 12 milligrams per tablespoon. Now, when you make this home grade and it's only 0.4, it's half of that. So 1 tablespoon of home grade MCT oil is only going to be 6 milligrams of C60 in terms of a dose. And so you literally, if you're going to take C60 MCT oil as your primary source of C60, then keep in mind that you want to get the same normal dose that you would get in avocado or oil. You need to take twice as much MCT oil. Okay, so keep that in mind. And the last thing that I want to point out, and this has been reported to me by Jay, my buddy from the topical video, and it also happened to me, is that Caprylic acid, for whatever reason, I mean, when I take that and when he took it on an empty stomach, and we take like like a tablespoon or two at a time, it really it hurts. I mean, it just causes stomach upset. Like, it's bad. But so what I do is I put it in my morning smoothie, and he's taking it with food, and then you don't feel the stomach pain. So I don't recommend taking 100% C60 Caprylic acid MCT oil on an empty stomach. Okay, so take it with food, and remember to take twice as much. Now, what I do is, like I said, I put it in my morning smoothie. I take a tablespoon of C60 MCT oil, i.e. 100% Caprylic acid MCT oil. I take 1 tablespoon of that and 1 tablespoon of C60 avocado oil to get what I consider to be my daily dose, which, as you can see from the math here, that's about 18 milligrams of C60 per day. All right, so that's my research. Again, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for visiting and stopping by. Your patronage is always appreciated. Your questions, I try to answer all of them as best I can, and I really just thank you again. I mean, every time I can't say it enough. Thank you for your kind comments, and I truly appreciate it, and I'm always humbled by how just generous and polite and just nice you guys are. So thank you for that. Internet's not a friendly place sometimes, so you guys are awesome. So anyway, lastly, if you want to learn more, and you have any questions, not just about MCT, but if you have any questions, you want to learn more, visit our Telegram C60 chat group. The link's in the video description below. Everybody's welcome, unless you're a spammer, and just post your question, and most likely somebody, I would say 99 out of 100 times, are going to pick up your question and answer it for you. So feel free, just visit our group, come by, stop, say hi, or share your story. We've got all of that too. So thank you for stopping by and watching this video. Aloha, and have a great day, and even more so, Happy New Year. Aloha.